Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2001 anime film Spirited Away. Now, this is a film that has massive praise and critical acclaim, and for whatever reason, I didn't really get around to watching it until very recently. I knew of it, I knew that it had a lot of fans, I knew that a lot of people really admired it, but I couldn't really say much else about it beyond that. And after watching it only once, I think that this lived up to the hype and then some. But that's just me personally. I know this is an acquired taste, like a lot of other anime films, and I know there's people who aren't as enamored by this movie. But I thought this film was incredible. I thought it was amazing, and I would say it's definitely right up there with some of the best anime films that I've seen. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I want to give a special shout out yet again to Sean for requesting another review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Spirited Away is directed by Hayao Miyazaki, who also wrote the film, and this is one of his most wondrous, one of his most genuinely impressive and just spectacular works of art. And his direction in this is absolutely phenomenal. It's some really astounding direction. The way that he incorporated very cinematic movements when it comes to the animation, in terms of the types of shots that he was utilizing, wide shots in particular, and tracking shots and some other techniques. It's a film that really does wow you visually. Like, there's a lot of moments in this that are just absolutely stunning, as well as vivid. And it's a really a fun film to watch, just to see the imagination and the creativity that's on display, and to see how Miyazaki brings all of his concepts and his ideas to life in the realm of animation. It's a film that I think, even if you're not a fan of it, due to its story and due to other elements, you can definitely still appreciate the animation and how genuinely breathtaking it is on more than one occasion. Like, there's a lot of shots in this that are just absolutely gorgeous. Like, there's a reason why this is a film that has like an aesthetic that a lot of people still really love to this day, because visually this film is just impeccable, and a big part of that is what Miyazaki brought to the film with his fluid direction, and how well it flows with the animation, and how he created an animated film that still felt like it was cinematic. It felt like it had a size and a scope to it. It didn't feel like it was just your average episode of some kind of anime series. Like, this really did feel like it was a big, a grand spectacle of a animated story. Now, Spirited Away features a screenplay which is also created by Miyazaki. Hayao Miyazaki wrote the film, but he created the story in the same way that he does pretty much all of his films. He storyboarded it first, and he built the world and created the aesthetic of the film, and then he crafted themes around it, and subtext, and characterization, and a plot, and he made it up as he went along. And I know for some people that's something they don't really care for. And I think with a lesser quality, creative, artistic individual, I think that that could turn out to be disastrous. But in the hands of Miyazaki, it turns into something, in my opinion, that is genuinely special and really unique. And like a lot of other sorts of anime, it's definitely an acquired taste, but I was absolutely compelled and captivated by this story from beginning to end. And I think in large part it has to do with the fact that Miyazaki focused first and foremost on creating such an immersive and such a unique and incredible and wondrous world and overall landscape, and then built characters around that and had subtext at points, but not in the way that it was too obtrusive or too obnoxious. And he really provided a lot of heart and soul to this script and to the story. This is a very spiritual film, and there's a lot of focus on spirits, and not just because the bathhouse itself is for the spirits, but that's also part of it. And I think that there is something really fascinating about that to me, because it is a very different type of cultural thing compared to what goes on in America, in the United States, in terms of the way that we approach spiritualism and things like that. So that was something that really, really grabbed me from the beginning. And I felt like it was just a really fresh and innovative and cool idea to have this film take place in this sort of purgatory where you have all these different spirits, and they sometimes look human, but in other ways they're animals, and they work at this bathhouse for other spirits. And I like that you have a human that's thrown into all of this, and you see how the other spirits react to it, and how they ostracize the human, and how they're reluctant to have the human there and help the human. And I like the dynamic that is created with all of that. And I really like this simple but effective nature of the coming of age aspect of this story. Spirited Away is very much a coming of age film. It's about this young girl named Chihiro who, in the beginning, she's fearful of even going down the tunnel with her parents. And she's not necessarily really in the best mindset in terms of handling a move and going to a new school and doing all of this in her life. And she winds up going across this covered bridge with her parents, winds up in this other world, and her parents, they don't really think any of the rules apply to them. They just eat all this food and without even asking, assuming that they can pay for it with their credit cards. And despite Chihiro's pleading for them to stop, they eat the food, and it happened to be food for the spirits, and they get punished for their insolence and their disrespect to the spirits, and they get turned into pigs, which reminded me of Willow. You're all pigs, pigs. And she's understandably freaked out, and she's now trapped in this world between the living and the dead. And she now has to find a way out. And in order for her to do that, she has to grow as a person, as a character, as an individual. She has to learn to believe in herself and to trust others and to really find a way to bring out the best in her in order to not only save herself and return herself to the human world, but also to save her parents. And through this whole journey, she finds an inner resilience, and she believes in herself in ways that she never really thought possible. And she becomes a genuinely strong character throughout this whole journey. And she doesn't sacrifice her integrity, though, throughout all of it. She's willing to help the stink spirit. And then it ultimately pays off for her. And her helping the stink spirit enables her to have that bit of food or the medicine that she's able to heal Haku with later on, and to heal No Phase. And I really like that. I like that Chihiro does change as a character. She does have an arc, in my opinion, anyway. And I like that throughout it, she never sacrifices her integrity. She never really sacrifices her spirit, and she had a lot of opportunities to do so, but she never does. And I like the contrast between Chihiro and other characters in the story, like Haku. And I like that there's actually connection between Haku and Chihiro that actually is rather deep and rather important for the both of them. I like that he's a driving force to help her throughout the story and continue to help her build confidence and help her find her way in this strange world. But also, they are connected in an even deeper way, where she ultimately helps Haku by making him remember who he is, and not only saves his life later on, but also gives him this freedom that he's been searching for throughout all his time here in this realm. And I like how a lot of the characters, even Yubaba, who seems like a character that is just mean spirited and evil and so on and so forth, because of the interactions and because of her working with and learning to appreciate the spirit that is inside of Chihiro, she also learns and becomes a better spirit and has these moments where she goes against what you initially think that she would be doing. She's not really a typical antagonist. There's antagonistic nature to her. There are elements of this character that are definitely the kind of traits that you would see in a villain. But as the story progresses, you see that there's more to her than that. And you see that she has a twin sister named Zaniba, and they look the same, but they have different personalities. And I also really like that contrast between the two of them. Zaniba's more like an old granny, and Yubaba's more of like this really rigid type of personality. And I liked a lot of the other characters too. Like I liked Lin. I really love the dynamic between Lin and Chihiro. It's almost like a mother daughter kind of thing going on there, or an older sister and a younger sister kind of a vibe. Kamaji, I also liked that character. And I really liked No Face. I liked that whole part of the story. I liked that No Face started out as a figure that was very helpful to Chihiro and just seemed rather harmless and innocent. And then when No Face uh, was let into the bathhouse, and people started taking advantage of No Face, and people started feeding No Face. New Face, No Face became a completely different face altogether. He became the face of greed and gluttony and all these other like human sins, and was no longer this innocent spirit. And I liked how that corruption was detailed throughout the script. I really liked how Miyazaki handled that. And I like that by the end of it, No Face recovers through the help of Chihiro and the medicine from the river spirit. And he winds up reverting back to normal. And then once he leaves the bathhouse and he goes and stays with Zaniba, he is now in the right place and in the right mindset. It's a good example of showcasing how an environment can corrupt you. And I thought that was really compelling. I genuinely did. It was a really compelling, interesting way to showcase how an environment itself, specifically the wrong environment, can corrupt people and make them into mean and nasty creatures. People who are just about getting fed and getting all this money and just being just absolutely horrendous, awful people. Even if that wasn't really in their nature from the beginning, because eventually the environment itself corrupts them. And I think there was just a lot of elements in this that were very genuinely intriguing to me when it comes to the story, like how Chihiro learns to become a employee of this bathhouse, how she finds a way, despite her short stature and despite her being a kid, still finds a way to do the job the best that she can, how she ingratiates herself among her fellow employees, how she builds connections with people that she barely even knows, and how she stands up for her beliefs. She stands her ground, even when it seems like that's not really necessarily something that at face value is going to work out. And I like that throughout all of this, she still finds a way to save her parents and revert them back to their previous form. She passes Yubaba's test at the end to save them. And I like that, she makes some new friends along the way, even people that used to be henchmen of Yubaba or Zaniba. I think it was Yubaba, because Zaniba turned them into like a hamster and like a little fly. And there's just a lot of really creative, fun, imaginative concepts and ideas that are peppered in throughout this entire script. And there's enough uh, daily goings on in the bathhouse when it comes to the different clientele and just the way that things are in there to make the story interesting, at least to me personally. And there's always this driving force of Chihiro trying to get back home and trying to save her parents. And I like by the end of the story, she succeeds, but in a pretty unlikely way. It's not defeating Yubaba and doing all this and using magic. She is able to find her way out of this world and save her parents and to save herself by just trusting in her spirit. and what she believes in, and her own integrity. And I like that there's like these smaller moments that I think some people might consider to be a little boring, but I think it helps the story and the characters grow on you more. And it definitely makes the visuals, when it comes to the animation and the direction, all the more powerful and impactful. Like the train scene, for instance. It's a slow moving scene, but it's a very visually splendid and surreal sequence that really sticks with you. And I think in large part it's because there's not a lot going on. It's just music and animation, and it's just able to really leave it's a pretty significant impression on you as a result. You get a lot of different emotions and different feelings throughout this story and throughout this film based upon actions by individuals, or based upon the music or the animation or the overall vibe and atmosphere or aesthetic of a scene. And I think the script does a good job allowing these moments to be present throughout the story. These moments where the aesthetic, the vibe, the atmosphere, that is what carries the scene, not necessarily the dialogue or some other aspects of storytelling. So, Spirited Away is like one of those rare examples of a story where there's not really as much in terms of like compelling, memorable, strong dialogue, and the plot is very simple, but it still works really well because of the fact that it's just such a unique and interesting world and landscape, and the simplistic story is still relatable enough for a lot of people that they can be drawn into it. And I like by the end, it has this full circle nature to it, because Chihiro, she winds up leaving this world with her parents, now back to human form, the same way that she came into it. And I like that there is this moment where she's holding on to her mother again, but with a different context, because she's holding on to her mother because she misses her mother. And she is just really happy that her mother is back in her life and she's not a pig anymore. And I like that a lot, actually. The full circle nature of the story. It was very poetic. And I love stories like that. And I don't think it's just the same thing. She started out one way, ended the same way. I don't necessarily see it that way. Just because she also is hanging by her mother's side, it's a completely different context now. She's hanging by her mother's side because she loves her mother and misses her, but she's still strong. She still has that strength that she's built throughout this whole journey. She's not holding on to her because she's afraid of going down into this dark tunnel anymore. She's not holding on to her because she's afraid of what's to come. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure there might be some other things I could probably talk about or mention in regards to the script and the story, but that's pretty much what I wanted to get across when it comes to Miyazaki's work when it comes to the script for this film. Now, I watched the American dub. I know a lot of people don't really prefer those kind of dubs when it comes to these films, but that's my personal preference. I watched a few scenes with the Japanese dub, and I honestly preferred the English dub. And I think the English dub actors that they chose here for the American version of the movie, the version that Disney worked on, I think they did a genuinely amazing job overall. Davy Chase, in particular, as Chihiro, she was absolutely top notch, tremendous, stellar, whatever superlatives or however you say that word you want to come up with. I think they definitely apply to her performance in this. Very nuanced, very strong, very charming personality overall that she was able to bring to her voiceover in this. And it was a very important voiceover because Chihiro's the lead, the main character. So you need to get that right. And I feel that they nailed it. And so did Chase. Jason Marsden, I also felt did a good job as Haku. Um, he has a certain strength to him, a certain rigidness that I think really did a work with the character. But he's also able to bring another quality to him, like a certain level of sweetness, which I think definitely applied itself very well to his work in the film. I also like Suzanne Plachette and her double duty as Yubaba and Zaniba. I thought she did a great job playing both characters. David Ogden Stiers as Kamaji. He was only in it for a little bit, but he made the most out of what he had to work with, including improvising some stuff. Um, and Susan Egan, I thought was excellent as Lynn. I really liked her sardonic, sarcastic personality and wit that she brought to the role. Paul Eating as Chichiaku, I thought he was fine too. So was Aniyaku, voiced by John Ratzenberger. And definitely want to give credit to No Face and Oagaru, who were both voiced by Bob Bergen. And you also had other people you might recognize. Um, you had Michael Chiklis, who voiced Chihiro's father, and Lauren Hawley, who voiced her mother. And you also have Tara Strong, who voiced the baby, um, Zaniba's baby, Bo. So yeah, it's a great voice cast. I think it's definitely one of the better voice casts for an American dub of an anime, for sure. Now, the cinematography by Atsushi Okui was awesome. Amazing job. There are so many shots in this. They're just establishing shots that are just truly tremendous. And I felt it was well edited too. I genuinely feel that Takahashi Sayama, I felt that he did a really strong job editing the movie. The music by Joe Hisaishi was off the charts. It was so good. And in a lot of ways, it's the beating heart of the film. And this is another just really, just absolutely spectacular score by this composer. He creates some really emotional and just really powerful pieces of music. And his score for this is no exception. Like the main theme that's utilized throughout is in my opinion not only something that sticks with you because of the composition of the notes, but it's also something that genuinely leaves its mark on your soul. And I really feel that this film would not be anywhere near as good without Hisayashi's score. It's a very integral part of this movie. And I felt it was paced fine enough. I know it's over 2 hours, but I wasn't really that bored. I was, for the most part, pretty captivated throughout it, whether it was due to the animation and just wanting to see what kind of imaginative, creative bit of animation I could see next, or just the overall concept and the overall atmosphere and the aesthetic of everything. And also just the story. I wanted to see it through. I wanted to see how uh, um, Chihiro was able, she was able to get out of this. How she was going to save her parents and save herself and find her way back into the human world. And that was something that I felt was genuinely captivating enough when it comes to the story that I was able to still be relatively invested in the movie, despite the fact that it is fairly long when it comes to its runtime. So yeah, it's a film that honestly I wouldn't mind watching again. I would love to pick up the Blu-ray sometime. Uh, I would love to get a 4K. Like this is a film that absolutely 100% is uh, built for a 4K transfer. Like I think this film could be stunning with a 4K transfer and HDR. It's already stunning when it comes to the HD rip that I saw, up converted to 4K, but it could be absolutely jaw dropping with a proper 4K restoration and HDR or Dolby Vision. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on Spirited Away. I thought it was spectacular, and I highly recommend it. But that's just another review. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.